Blog Talk Radio.
Hello, everyone. I'm Alan Potcotter, and you're listening to Call Talk for October 31st, 2018. Today, we're reviewing highlights from Call Center Campus 2018 with hosts Bruce Belfiore and John Chatterley. Due to the nature of this show, we won't be including a question and answers for this time. But if anyone is listening either live or later and wishes to ask questions or make a comment on anything discussed, please email me at calltalk@benchmarkportal.com, and I will be sure to get to the right person. I want to remind everyone that all of our shows are archived and available to listen to at Benchmark Portal any time of the day. And now I would like to introduce the host of Call Talk, Bruce Belfiore.
Thank you, Alan, and welcome back to Call Talk, everyone. Today's Call Talk episode is a bit different from our normal show, as Alan indicated, in that we'll be reviewing highlights from Call Center Campus earlier this month, held in Phoenix, Arizona, at the Palomar Kimpton Hotel. So this episode of Call Talk will bring together some great takeaway tips from that event. And I'm joined by my colleague, John Chatterley, and together we're going to focus on the exceptional aha moments from this cutting-edge symposium, which was designated one of the industry's must-attend events and really was a wonderful success. So included are key points from the rousing keynote speech by Barry Maher, the Cannabis and Contact Center talk, plus interactive roundtables on leadership, technology, and metrics. And a bunch of new ideas were also presented on at-home agents, huddle boards, best practices coaching, culture and agent engagement, and optimizing use of queue time in a totally original way. Actually, we could probably do an entire segment of Call Talk on any one of these things, but we're going to be giving you the highlights of this great event today. So, John, thank you for joining me. I think our audience already knows you are the Director of Content and Analysis and Chief Editor at BenchmarkPortal and our longest tenured colleague here at BenchmarkPortal.
I'm glad to be here, Bruce. I think this year's Call Center Campus was one of the best we ever had. We had a great variety of topics and some absolutely fabulous speakers.
Yeah, we sure did, John. There was great insights, enthusiasm, and discussion. Really, really good.
What I particularly liked was the caliber of attendees at this year's campus and the high level of participation they produced during our sessions.
Mm-hmm. Yep, no, that's right. And well, let's delve into some of the top takeaways from the event. For our listeners, starting with the keynote speech given by Barry Maher, who's the author of the best-selling book, Filling the Glass. And, John, I know you really loved this keynote. What were some of Barry's main points?
Well, Barry made us think about how what we say can make all the difference in the world when talking to others, be they coworkers, customers, or even bosses. And as he roamed around among the attendees, he would ask one to tell us something and turn it around to show us how saying another more positive way could make a world of difference about how it was taken by the rest of us. Particularly, he pointed out the use of and instead of but in conversations that we have or dealings we have with others. So instead of saying, I like the way you look, but he would remind us to say, I like the way you look and.
That's right. Exactly. No, this was a really good one and for anybody who does coaching on any level or mentoring on any level who's listening, which is everybody basically who's listening to this, think about that. Instead of saying, okay, you did a really good job on this, but you could have done this better. Saying, well, your tone of voice was really good, and you could have gotten even more impact with the customer by doing such and such. Or, you're a really good supervisor, a really good manager, and you can add this to your repertoire going forward, or this is something that I learned myself, and I would suggest you try it out too. really, that was a great one because most of us, virtually all of us, I mean, I've got to say, tend to use the word but or however, right?
Yes.
So, right, we're all waiting for the word but or the word however. And instead, if it's an and it's put in a positive way, and you could do it even better if, then, this is a great way to do it. Yeah, great takeaways, John.
Yeah, he also pointed out the value of dissenting opinions, and that if we agree with everything our boss says or does, then we're not doing our job. He kind of quipped that if you agree with everybody, then who needs you? So.
Exactly. No, a very good point. And diversity of opinions are important. And then he would also say, so you need to make sure that diversity comes out through what you talk about, but do it. And sorry, I just did it wrong, didn't I? Okay, and do it the right way, right?
Exactly.
So
exactly.
If you need to express a different opinion, and do it the right way so that it's actually heard. And when we get to the part where we'll talk about the leadership panel, there were some good insights there about how to communicate this sort of thing.
Yes, there were.
Yeah.
And I got a lot out of that. I've been thinking about and ever since.
Yes, yeah, exactly. So please, it's a good takeaway for people listening to this. Now, then we heard about the cannabis and contact centers, what every manager needs to know. And this was from expert Christine Canine of Higher Image. And this is one where there's still a lot of managers, and we know this, John, because we talk to them all over the country, who are kind of putting their head in the sand. They don't really want to confront it. Obviously, for big structured companies, they have tons of bureaucracy that have already looked into this and the right way to do it. Smaller centers oftentimes don't have a structured approach toward it. And even in the larger centers, sometimes the approach is not up to date in terms of what's going on. So that means that there are a lot of confused managers out there with regard to what their approach should be appropriately and professionally on cannabis and the contact center. And Christine did a great job of sort of walking us through that and also giving us the understanding that things are going to continue to evolve. So what's true today may not be totally true tomorrow. She was my guest for Call Talk in June of 2018, and I invite listeners on this show who are interested in this topic specifically to pull that up and listen to that episode of Call Talk. And if you need more information, to get in direct contact with Christine. And John, I think we could both see that this talk was an eye-opener for many in the audience. There were a lot of people taking notes and just trying to sort of keep up with it.
Yes, she reminded us that because of the changing landscape of acceptance across many states, the use of cannabis, the approach to dealing with the use of cannabis in our centers and with our people needs careful and thoughtful and sensitive responses. We just can't be ones who say, well, if you use marijuana, then you can't work here, because it's turned out that HR centers are developing a better approach to how to deal with this on an individual basis.
Yeah, and so there are obviously positions and industries in which you can have just a bright line. Still, you can have a bright line prohibition of use of drugs. But obviously, in the call center sector, nobody is driving a forklift truck, right? So that's not going.
Exactly.
Nobody's going out on the highway. You're driving your cubicle. So it's a bit of a different situation in terms of risk analysis. And, HR experts are attuned to that. And so things are changing. You need to know that there's a lot of difference among the states. and jurisdictions. And so you have to, if you're in one place and you've got one center in one state and everybody comes from that state, then, God bless you, it's going to be easier for you to keep up on things. But do lean on your HR people to make sure that they are in touch with the lawyers and they have everything straight and that you have everything straight from them. If you're in multiple jurisdictions, so for instance, she was talking about the fact that Maine has a different situation from New Hampshire and from other New England states. So you have to keep that in mind when you're putting things, deciding policies. But one of the things she said was first have a policy, because if you have a written policy, then at least you know where you are. It's not quicksand underneath you. You've got something there, and then that can be submitted to HR, can be submitted to the lawyers. It can be held up against changing, not only changing laws in the states, but also court decisions interpreting the laws, which are going to be things that happen from time to time. So one of the things that she mentioned was that oftentimes it's hard to catch people in the act. And the thing about testing and marijuana, it's not like alcohol. The impairment with alcohol pretty much goes with when you fail the test. The testing for marijuana could show that you've used it sometime in the last several days, but you may not be impaired at all right now. So what she said was, John, right, to focus on the symptoms of the problem. In other words, if people are late to work, performance issues, she mentioned, Twinkie crumbs, just kind of be funny with regard to the munchies. That is something that you can focus on. It's sort of separate and apart from the drugs use specifically, but it definitely is performance linked. So that was one of the things that she mentioned, John.
That's right. I recall that, and she suggested that if we're sensitive to a situation, don't email the HR department. Have a direct talk with them if you feel like you're on unsure or on shaky ground.
Yes. Okay. So this is one of her suggestions, which was, I think, to not leave a paper trail that could come back to bite you after all. And, managers are oftentimes put in such difficult positions because they're expected to know everything, and there's no way you can, particularly when the everything is changing under your feet. So, she was saying that if you should insist that HR give you things in writing, but when you're talking to HR about a specific person's situation, and that situation may result in litigation, her advice was to talk to the HR people so that, prejudice or other things with regard to drug use wouldn't come through in what you were writing about. Is that right, John?
That's exactly right, Bruce. That's what as you said earlier, it was one of the most enjoyed, most appreciated sessions of the whole campus. It drew very rapt attention from everybody there.
Well, this is what we try to do with Call Center Campus too, is to bring out those things which are really important for call center managers to know, and which they are not necessarily getting elsewhere. Now, the other thing people really enjoyed was our first panel roundtable on expanding concepts of leadership in the call center. And this was led by Barry Maher, our keynote speaker. And a number of things came out. One of them was to make your people who report to you, feel important. Now, this was a nice phrase, but, how do you do that? How can we on this, show give you ideas about how you can do this? Well, one of the things that came out is that you make people feel important by doing so intentionally, by thinking about it and then acting on it, which means in many cases changing the way you approach your communications with the people that report to you. And so some of the things that came out of that was share and show them your vision for the organization. and that's the kind of thing that can be done collectively. But then also show them your vision for them as individuals, okay? So when you're actually talking to them, what's your vision for them? Look at them through different eyes and then communicate them in a different way so that they feel important when you do that. That was something that was really
important individually, not just important as part of the group.
Exactly. Both are important. Yeah. And how about some, in fact, one of the things was nothing you ever say is persuasive as the way you listen. That was another nugget that came out of this. And the way you listen to people is a real game changer in terms of how important people feel. So think about that.
One of our colleagues, Chris Tomza, reminded us that a boss says go, whereas a leader says let's go. Just that turn of phrase makes them feel included instead of making them feel like they're being directed or told or commanded. And people are sensitive. It's important to be sensitive to their feelings and to realize that in their minds they're just as important as anybody else.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And if you make them feel that way, it will really go a long way. Yeah. And John, you've had a long experience as a manager, and there was another thought about teaching. Can you sort of expand on that came out of that panel?
Well, teaching is best done by example. You teach through the way you lead, and then others find it easy to follow because they don't feel like they're being talked down to. And also paying it forward, complimenting, as teaching not only as a classroom type of scenario, but teaching by the way you do things, or again going back to the and phrase, showing them a way that they might be able to do something better. That can be done either collectively or individually, and it does not have to be an organized classroom type teaching session. Right.
One of the things that came out was that in terms of teaching, which is really communicating in order to inform, that you need to be able to do that both to your subordinates and to your superiors. And those may be done in different ways, but they're both really important because in most cases, superiors don't really understand what you're doing in the call center. And so, I still remember a time when I gave a speech keynote to 200 people in the insurance sector, and they had all been complaining about how their higher-ups didn't understand them. So I said, well, how many of your CEOs came up through the call center ranks? And there was a moment of stunned silence. Then nobody put up their hands, and everybody started laughing because nobody had anybody who had gone up through the call center ranks. So really, you have to put yourself in the position of communicating and informing not only your subordinates but also your superiors. And one of the things that Angie Lucky Success, who was one of the people on the panel, very, very accomplished manager, she talked about investing in the careers of the people who report to you. And I've seen her do that because at a interactions conference earlier this year, she brought her number 2 with her and, heaped praise upon him, rightly so, for the way he had helped with many of the successes that they had in their center at Landauer. So, and she's the one also who says, pay it forward. When you get to a position of being a manager, mentor the other people who are under you and show your leadership that way. And so one of the things that I would suggest to people on this broadcast is think about that as you're sitting in front of your reports and talking to them. How are you thinking about investing in their careers?
Exactly. Heath Arnsberger pointed out that we should try to be our authentic self, humanize ourselves. It's the only way to be a part of the culture, since people need a way to relate to you as a superior or to us as a superior. So, try to be real. Don't show up at work thinking that you got to put on a costume, a persona, a different you than who you really are.
Right. Today happens to be Halloween, so you can put on a costume, but most days you shouldn't be doing that. And I thought that was a really good point, very well stated by Heath, on that you even have to show your uncertainties and involve people in your struggles in terms of trying to understand how to do things the best way. As long as they understand that you have their back and you are looking for the best way, then they'll support you.
That's right, and you don't always have to have the answers. You don't always have to be the only one there with the answer or the what do we do definition. You can ask for advice. Ask your people, what do you think we ought to do about this situation, or how would you approach this particular scenario? Things like that. You'd be surprised how much they think about that as well, and how much they appreciate being asked.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we also had a talk from Mark Riddlesworth on work-at-home agents, which has been a very popular topic, and he had some juicy nuggets. John, do you want to talk about those?
Sure. He pointed out, well, first of all, I think one of the big nuggets was he revealed to us how big it's getting, how big work at home is getting. He pointed out that 80 or so percent of the Fortune 500 companies these days have some degree of work at home agents. He also mentioned that on Indeed, the website Indeed, there's over 9,500 work at home jobs being offered. So he made it clear that work at home is a trend of the present and the future, and that that in doing so, there are a lot of benefits that can be derived from it, such as improved employee morale and retention, the ability to work to their own schedule. It's not the structured 8 to 5 schedule or whatever the 8 hour or 8.5 or 9 hour block is, because work at home people have the option to be able to start work at a selected time, back off from work or sign out for a period of time, and then sign back in, even to cover some off-hour times of day. So, and then of course there's the added benefits of no commuting. It has a big impact on absenteeism, and also is a way to handle seasonal spikes and people that have to work overtime. At least they don't have to work overtime and then leave and go home. They're already there, so working overtime isn't as big a burden.
Right.
What about some of the benefits that you noted?
Yeah, no, those are great. There's different models. One of the things that he was saying is that it's not one size fits all. So don't figure that just because you've heard about some other way of doing it that you say it's not going to work for me. Then think about what would work for you. Because some people will start in a brick and mortar thing and then allow people to push out as they prove themselves. Other people start right with remote hires that they train, that they acculturate, that they make sure they manage properly, because one of the things you mentioned is that, as with anything, execution is key here. Doing it the right way is key. But to your point about adding flexibility for workforce management, it's huge. It's the ability to maybe pull in people during peak times, the unexpected peak times for intraday management can be something that really, really helps out and can be a lot more economically feasible than certain other alternatives. So, yeah. We also talked about. Go ahead.
I was just going to say the other main point that I got out of this is the expanded labor pool that comes from going to a work-at-home model. You can reach out to people in different communities miles further away than they would ever be able to commute if they had to come to a brick-and-mortar facility every day.
Right. No, a lot of great advantages, and Mark did a great job of sort of laying those out for us. We also talked in a couple of breakout sessions about huddle boards and coaching best practices. And on the huddle board side, we actually did a call talk episode earlier this year with Debbie Frazier, one of our colleagues, who unfortunately was unable to attend Call Center Campus. So Dee Buell was the head of that session. Both Debbie and Dee used to be colleagues together at their former place of business. And so they have really good experience with how to use these techniques where people get together. They're like team meetings, but with things written on boards and that can be tracked, that can be looked at, discussed over time. It can be focused depending on what you want. There's not just one way of doing huddle boards. It could be focus on metrics, making sure you make your metrics. It could be focus on other goals, but it is a way of bringing people together. And so I encourage you to listen to the Huddle Board episode if you're interested in that. And then the coaching best practices, one of the things, by the way, one of the people who were there said, I had heard about huddle boards. I didn't think they were a good idea. Now that I heard Dee talk about them, I'm definitely going to institute them in my workplace. So that was really good to hear. Coaching best practices, which Chris Thompson led that session. One of the things that hit a number of people was when he talked about how 70% of meaning, this is according to studies, of meaning from a speaker come through tone of voice in a telephone interaction. In other words, in a telephone interaction, you're deprived of being able to see somebody, and therefore there's the words and there's the tone. And it's extraordinary how much of the tone brings across in terms of meaning to the person listening. So that was really cool.
Yes, it was. I even reflect on my own interactions with contact centers, where the difference between someone who's sort of talking in a flat tone of voice and somebody who's really putting forth some emotion that lets me know that he or she is truly concerned about whatever my reason for call was, and is there to do everything they can to help. But it all comes through, as you say, by the tone of voice, not by how knowledgeable a person is. So I'm glad you pointed that out, because I can very much relate to that myself.
And that's actually an area where a lot of managers and supervisors and QA people are kind of bedeviled, because they are finding it hard. They find it hard to critique somebody using the word "and," of course. But anyway, critique somebody.
Yes.
When that person says, "Well, I did everything I was supposed to do," but the person who's reviewing, the coach is saying, hey, it just, in the case of the customer, it just won't come across as well as it could if the tone could be changed. And so, but people don't, oftentimes agents don't take that seriously. And with this kind of statistic, which comes from research, you can take that and do something serious with it. In fact, one of the people said, I'm going to get training in this area that really, breaks through that problem that I have with a chunk of my agents who just are a little bit too flat, who don't have the right communication style for it. Anyway, so let's see. Other things we talked about were managing across generations, John. That's a really important one, too. Are there any takeaways from that one?
Well, the main takeaway is we need to learn and understand that there are differences in the Y2K generation, the me generation, the old generations that I remember that they haven't probably even heard of, the yuppie generation. So it's.
I was just going to say, I think the thing there is just to put yourself in the shoes of the various people who report to you and say, how will this play with the mindset that this person has? Oftentimes the mindset will be a product of the generation. Not always, but oftentimes will be. So that's important. The other thing and we're sort of getting to the end of our time here, we talked about optimizing technology. And that was an excellent panel discussion by people who've actually done it, really implemented technology very well. We've seen it. And their advice was study your needs really well before you buy anything. Know what you already have, okay? And beat up on your providers if you feel like you don't understand everything, because the number of people who underutilize the technology they buy is astronomical. Be careful in selecting your vendor. Be strict about holding the vendor accountable. Be equally strict about holding yourself accountable for mastering the technology you have. And here there was a story that I told about Angie, where she was presenting to the Interactions Conference, and she asked how many people in the audience used 5 of the functionalities that were available from the vendor that they all had. And about half the hands went up. Said, how many are you using? I think it was 8 or 9, and there was only a few hands that went up. And she said, well, we're using something like 18 functionalities. And everybody's jaw just dropped because nobody came anywhere close to that. And why? Because she made it her job to understand what all the functionalities were. She picked up that orange, and she was squeezing all the juice out of it. And unfortunately, most managers don't, either because they don't have the mindset or they don't feel they have the time. But you really need to do that in order to make sure you're getting the most out of your technology.
Yeah, that was a great example that she made.
Yeah.
Go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt.
Okay. She was talking about, get involved with your user communities, attend your user conferences, contribute to and learn from the blogs. This is a way that you also can become a super user. And super users are those users who give feedback and are accessible to the vendor and who, become almost indispensable to the product development and the product betterment of the vendor's products. So she was very proactive on that, and it's a great lesson there. John, we're at the end of our time. Is there anything else that we should talk about? What are the other things that we should mention?
Well, the only other thing that I think we should highlight is the session that we held on why metrics matter, because every contact center needs to know where they are meeting their goals and where they need to improve. Dr. John Anton, the founder of BenchmarkPortal, used to ask every center that he visited, to think about how good is good enough. Our session on why metrics matter generated some aha moments with attendees, with many of the attendees who recognized how metrics must be viewed collectively and not individually. For example, cost per agent per hour, one metric that most centers measure, is actually impacted by several other key performance metrics, including handle time, occupancy, and utilization. And another one pointed out how a rush to shorten handle time in a center, perhaps being driven by cost or by call flow, can impact first call resolution and customer satisfaction. So I thought there were some great takeaways that came out of that session.
Yes, no, those were great, very good. And we also talked about queue time optimization, because everyone's talking about customer experience and customer experience journey mapping. But there's one piece, and anybody who is listening to this and who has done customer experience journey mapping, I would ask them about this, because there's one piece of the customer journey that not that many people are thinking about, and that is queue time. What do we do with our customer during queue time? And the vast majority, as we know, have something like, your call is important to us, we'll get to you as soon as we can. They put on some nice music, etc. But in fact, there are much more creative things that can be done with queue time. And that's one where, for lack of time right now, I'll just ask anybody who wants to parse out that piece of the customer journey and do something more with it, get in touch with me directly, because there's some very interesting things that are being done now in terms of informing, also personalizing communication to the person on the phone, so that it's not simply some kind of an offer thrown out there. It's actually a personalized communication to that person by dipping into the CRM system, by dipping into other databases, so that the customer will feel that that part of their journey is in fact not just a waste of time, but something where it's helped to create a connection and loyalty to the company. So this is cutting edge stuff in terms of this queue time optimization. But please get in touch with me if you're interested in that. We could talk about it some more. We also talked about what's going on at BenchmarkPortal during the conference, and some of the things we're doing on the research side. John's going to be updating the Agent Voices report during the first half of 2019, so we're really looking forward to that, John. We're doing webinars with PACE, and those are going extremely well. iBenchmark, which is the automated benchmarking that we have, which makes what's an extremely useful thing, which is benchmarking, much more easy, is something that's being rolled out with InContact, and will be rolled out with others as well. And also, we're getting involved in temporary management at BenchmarkPortal. So that's something that we're now able to offer to our clients. And in terms of outreach, probably, John, more outreach than we've ever done. So there's just an awful lot out there in terms of content. We love this stuff, and really that all came through, I think, with the response of the audience at Call Center Campus.
Yes, absolutely, Bruce. And like you say, we don't have any more time, but we also produce a number of very useful reports. Our annual industry reports that we generate for over 45 different industries provides a lot of insight into how the various industry sectors are evolving. So I just thought I'd mention that.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, well, in closing, one of the things that we also mentioned at the call center campus is that we really do impact the lives of millions of people, and the contact center industry is so important in terms of communication between companies, governments, and nonprofits and people. And the attitudes, the skills, the dedication we bring to our jobs really create success for our customers, for our companies, our colleagues, and our own careers as well. So with that, I think I'll thank you very much, John, for being with me on this, and we'll hand things over to Alan.
Thank you, Bruce.
Thanks again to John Chatterley and Bruce Belfiore for your recap of Call Center Campus 2018. Be sure to join us next month for another great show, or look at our huge selection of archive shows and topics at BenchmarkPortal.com. Then click on Call Talk, where you'll find over 9 seasons of this show. From all of us here at Benchmark Portal, keep those headsets steady and your fingers ready. This is Alan Pottcotter signing out. Have a great Halloween.